All right. Hey, folks. So today we're going to talk about cardio for gains. Now, I want to have a nice, long, in depth look at the role of cardio for muscle gains, covering things like the interference effect. So, are you actually harming your bodybuilding progress by doing a lot of cardio, doing them together, or is there some kind of help when those things are applicable? Because I think there are nuances on both sides, and hopefully, if you get anything from this channel, it's that it's worth exploring the nuances because that's how you get to decide what's appropriate for you at certain points of your training career. So, with all that said, cardio for muscle gains, let's crack on. But firstly, thanks for making it onto my channel. If you have any questions or comments, pop them down below. And if you'd like to work with me on your own strength and physique goals, there's a link in the description. There's also a link to my Patreon. Patreon has been launched last week. Pretty good so far. Got a few signups, which is nice. I just did the first weekly live Q&A this morning, which was awesome, answering questions, which is great. And I've also been setting people up with their consultations for the month. So it's been very cool. Also, if you're not and you are interested, sign up for my podcast. I have a podcast that I try and put out every week, pretty much. It's actually been active for a lot longer than my YouTube. I've done the podcast since 2018. So there you go. So if you fancy signing up to that and hearing a bit more from me, some of the stuff is a little more like lifey stuff. So if you're not interested in that, stay away. But majority of it is just, muscle building, cardio, that kind of stuff, and like psychology of bodybuilding. All right. So with that long interlude, let's get underway. I'm going to kick it off with this classic meme because it's funny. So let's go into the first sort of point of the day. Now, looking at some commonly held beliefs. So there is a belief, rightfully so, that there is interference between two opposing goals when the body is trying to adapt. So if you're trying to adapt to be the biggest and strongest you can be, there is likely some interference effect with some activities you can do. So this is why one of the first laws of muscle building is to try and keep things as specific as possible. And I've talked about this in previous videos. Try and funnel the majority of your training energy towards things which are going to help your bodybuilding. So with that in mind, a lot of people skip out on cardio because they feel like it's not going to directly help them. But as we'll see in this video, there are nuances to that. Now, give you an example here. Usain Bolt is completely wired for short, explosive bouts. Now, if you were to take an Usain Bolt and adapt him for Olympic weightlifting, it would actually be relatively easy for him to adapt to that, simply because he's wired for short, explosive bouts. In fact, I know firsthand a couple of powerlifters and Olympic lifters who used to be sprinters when they were younger. And it's really served to be quite a nice transition as they get older. Adapting him towards bodybuilding stuff, like Usain Bolt, would be maybe a bit more problematic because it's not supposed to be as explosive as something like Olympic weightlifting, or even as something like powerlifting, to a certain extent. So the way that you're adapted, the way that you are trained tends to be to make you more suited to that style of training because the adaptations are already in place. And there's possibly also some, genetic factors there as well, of course. So there is an interference effect. There is. Now, we can't deny that. And the second thing is, in terms of other commonly held beliefs of interference, it's just how you structure your week. So time involved in one goal is time taken away from another, which makes sense. Now, assuming we have a limited amount of time to train, trying to fit in all the volume we need to actually grow effectively may well take a full hour, 3 or 4 days a week, which is, for a lot of people, that's pretty much all the time they actually have to train. So a lot of people come to me and that's pretty much the limit of what they can do alongside work, family, kids, social occasions, and that's fine. So you have to work within the context of the individual. So there is a time consideration as well as training adaptations. There is a time consideration. So there's two interferences there. Now, the problem with some of these beliefs is that, particularly with the first one, it just doesn't apply to most people. Most people are not training at the highest level of a Usain Bolt or whatever else, that they are going to suffer from issues of interference. It's a great argument to say, yes, I don't want to do cardio because I want to be just fully trained to be a powerlifter. But the thing is, if you're saying that and you're 50 pounds overweight and you are a regional powerlifter with a squat of 3 plates, a bench of 2, and a deadlift of 4, I mean, sorry to say, but you're kind of kidding yourself there. You're ignoring a problem which could easily be fixed and which more than likely will actually help your powerlifting by making you fitter, enabling you to do more work in the gym, work harder in the gym, potentially compete in a lighter weight category and be more successful there. So a higher body fat, poor cardiovascular capacity trainee would clearly respond to a better engine. Someone who's at the limit of their recovery capabilities but wants to train more would benefit from additional cardio. So I have some people who come to me where they want to train 4 to 6 times a week. Great, we can do that if they have time. But then they also want to do more stuff because let's say they're young, they don't have a great deal to do. They don't have kids, all that kind of stuff, which take up time. So they would benefit from additional activities, which could be cardio. But more often than not, I just tell those people to learn a skill like cooking because I think that's more useful. Like if you have time in the week, rather than go run off do cardio, go figure out how to cook and prep your meals. That tends to be more useful. But anyway, there are some problems with those beliefs. So in terms of where cardio benefits us, let's look at that. So we've covered, commonly held beliefs and problems with those beliefs. Let's now look at, in a practical sense, how can cardio actually help us? Now, I'm going to start with a famous quote from, I think it was originally Vince Lombardi and or it was George Patton, either one of those. They're about the same sort of generation. Basically, it goes like this: fatigue makes cowards of us all. Now, how that applies here is that when you're tired, you simply can't work as hard. Okay, the perception of effort will be that it's high, but the actual objective effort won't be. And that's really important to bear in mind because I may be saying this right now, and I guarantee you there are most people in the comments would turn around and go, well, I train as hard as I can. And I believe you. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying, though, is if your other factors are not in check, what you consider to be hard training might not be as hard as if you were better cardiovascularly fit, if you were better fed, if you were better hydrated, if you slept better, if you recovered better. You get what I'm saying? It will all be perceived in your mind and your body as hard training, but the actual effort you output won't be. And most people can go through their entire lives in that sort of mode of thinking, which is why one of the reasons why they never make any progress. So I think just to give you a very stark example, all right, so just bear with me on this because it takes a lot of introspection to actually admit this is true. And so a lot of you won't. So I want you to just really think about this for a second and hear me out. And let me give you this extreme example. No one's going to argue that if you go into the gym drunk, that it's going to be less effective. And why is it going to be less effective? Probably because you're not going to be able to lift as much. You're going to be less coordinated. You're going to be more fatigued. What you might perceive as being a high level of effort is actually not going to be anywhere near as high as if you went in fully rested, not drunk, hydrated, well fed, all that stuff. Even if it feels like you're training hard, it won't actually be quite as difficult. There'll be reps you're missing, cadence is off. It just won't be as good. You won't be able to push as hard or as deep. It'll just feel harder. You might hit perceived failure sooner, but actually you'd be able to do a lot more if you had more in the tank. There's a very stark example of this is if you just go in after 4 or 5 days where you've been dehydrated and with low food, you won't be able to lift as much. Powerlifters do this all the time. Powerlifters will try and make weight for a competition by dehydrating themselves. They go to a competition and they just fail their openers, like you effed up. But it's a prime it's a prime example of what I'm saying. A lot of people go through their lives in that state because lifting is just not a priority for them. So they're, rather than getting that extra meal or drink that extra liter of water or salt their food or get more sleep or whatever, they're skimping on or do the cardio like we're talking about here. They'll skimp on that kind of stuff just so they can get to the gym and get the workout in. But all the supportive factors are not there. So they can't actually put the high degree of effort in that's necessary. So the same goes for being like all these other things. Like if you go to the gym not drunk, but let's say you go in poorly fed, poorly hydrated, or let's say you're 50 pounds overweight and you go in with really bad work capacity. Yes, Faz, I'm working hard. I'm working really hard. I take every set to failure. But if you dropped 40 pounds, if you got really fit, if you fed yourself properly, if you hydrated properly, if you slept properly, would you be able to work harder? Yes. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's where the benefit is. Greater work capacity, it directly impacts how hard you can objectively work in the gym. And notice the key word there, objectively. It doesn't even matter if you think you're working hard. If you turn up to the gym with piss poor recovery, poor cardiovascular capabilities, and all the rest of it I've been saying, what you think is hard work is a joke. So it's a difficult one to accept because everyone likes to think they're working hard, and I'm not taking that away from you. I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are. But it wouldn't be as hard as if you were actually fitter. So that's where cardiovascular work comes into play. That's where there's a benefit. And it works in the same way as if you come into the gym, if you're poorly fed, poorly hydrated, poor sleep, stressed, all that kind of stuff. What you perceive to be higher level of work going to failure will be hardly that. So that's a big thing. And it's one of the reasons why when you're coaching, it's wise to look at people's extra factors. I have a number of clients I'm working out with right now who are older gentlemen, and the general lifestyle needs a lot of improvements. So cardiovascular work needs improvements. Just general aches and pains need to be cleared up. Diet needs to be worked on. Body fat needs to be cleaned up before we can get to the point where we're really driving it. And they think they're warriors. They think they're working hard, and for them they are. Subjectively, they're working really hard. I'll never take that away from them. But we need to get them in a point where that hard work is really intense, and that comes with getting all the rest of the factors into play. It is not something that people talk about a great deal, but it's true. So at this point, I just want to address RIR again. This is where the whole reps in reserve, rate of perceived exertion, failure arguments kind of fall apart for anyone other than advanced folks. A problem I have with part of that argument, the RIR argument, is that a lot of it is fit pros talking to each other. Yeah. So me talking to another fit bro, talking about reps in reserve and the benefits of that. My physique, my body, my day is fully focused towards having all my meals and hydration, all that kind of stuff done. A lot of people aren't like that. So, and I've been advanced, so I know what it takes to push that hard, and arguably I am now. So at that level, you can actually discuss RIR and you can have some reps in reserve. Now, when fit pros are talking amongst each other, talking about the benefits in RIR, and then you try and address that with Gen Pop, a lot of times it causes a lot of confusion because they're just not at that level. The fact that you're an advanced lifter means you more than likely will have needed to get all your ducks in a row. So your training will already be ridiculously hard. So you may need periods of pulling back. You may benefit from that. Most beginners and early intermediates, they simply don't have the work capacity warranted to keep a few reps in the tank. It's the same argument as getting those factors in check, like the cardio, like the food, like the sleep, all that kind of stuff. So, and it's a learned skill. So over time, it comes with time, with the commitment to effort, both in and out of the gym. So put an example at the bottom there of the 60 kilo squatter in the comments. I train every set to failure, bro. Yeah, look, I'm sure you do, but again, objectively speaking, you've got to get all those factors in check. And in today's video, we're talking about cardio so that these factors actually make sense. Right, so next benefit to cardio is joint protection. This is something that I've experienced very, very starkly over the last 6 months. Now, initially when I started running, and I shared with you guys that I was running and it was going very well, initially I did used to struggle with some knee pain. It's been inflamed for a couple of days, and that got less and less. And now when I go on a long run and I do it particularly hard, I do get a bit of joint stress and it's fine. But what I have noticed is, looking back now over the last 6 months or so, my knees are in better shape than they ever have been. That is not something I ever thought I would say, because all throughout my powerlifting sort of time, I did struggle with knees and how to manage stress on the knees. So I would change my programs to manage knee stress, do a lot more work on like leg presses and stuff like that. But weirdly enough, my knees have been, touch wood, pain-free for a long time now. And I've also seen this coming from other clients who come to me from running backgrounds. More often than not, they don't struggle with things like squats, even if they're a bit overweight. Now, unless they're acutely overdoing their recovery for everything, like running and cardio and all that stuff, then yeah, they can run into knee problems. But in general, the guys who come to me from running backgrounds, they tend to have very, very strong, robust joints. So there is something about the repetitive, low-level loading that leads to strengthening of the joints and connective tissues, as long as you can recover from it and manage it well. So my own experience and my own observation of clients tends to support this. So that's another benefit of cardio that I've experienced firsthand and I've seen in my clients. It tends to lead to direct strengthening of the joints involved, which is pretty cool. I imagine your back would be pretty bomb-proof if you were very, very used to running and you just could run miles and miles without causing too much of a problem and recover from that well too. As long as you manage the overall load correctly, then yeah, I think you'd be onto something. Bear in mind, with my running, I've only run about once a week for about 6 months now. So I've not even tried to push it further than that, even though I've had many people close to me tell me I should run more often. But I know my body. I know it'll come with time, and that would be exceeding its recovery capabilities. But in being patient, I've allowed my joints to actually get accustomed to that stress of lifting more and also running more. And now I'm prospering from that. So it's another benefit. So in summary, we have to respect that at a certain level, there is an interference effect arising from different activities, like training adaptations as well as time considerations, as I went through at the beginning of the video. However, just getting in better shape to allow you to lift harder is not an opposing adaptation. It is a very much a supportive adaptation towards the singular goal of working harder in the gym, enabling you to add mass. And finally, injury prevention and joint strengthening is a very real thing, as long as you can manage your recovery for both, and this is built up slowly. So I hope that I've given you all the case for what are some of the commonly held reasons that people don't do cardio on a bodybuilding routine, and hopefully I've sort of put them aside to show you that for the majority of people, they can actually be supportive goals rather than opposing goals. And I hope now that the weather's getting better, some of you do take that up and start to employ some running. I have my running routine that I use to go from 0 running to an hour in a video, which I'll try and link up. But yeah, give it a try. I personally believe it's a good thing. It definitely helps the majority of people. Right, folks, I'm going to call it there. If you have gotten this far in the video and you haven't subscribed, do go ahead and hit subscribe. I think quite a lot of my views come from people who are not subscribed. So it will be cool if you guys hit subscribe. You then get notifications for future videos, and also my subscriber number goes up, which makes me feel good. So I'm going to call it there, and I will speak to you guys in the next one. Take care.